What?
Are you ready?
Yeah, I'm ready. Okay.
Okay. I want to start popping this. Is it recording? Okay, sick.
I think I'll. Yeah.
We're going to get into that.
Oh, boy.
Are you ready?
3, 2, 1. Hey.
Merry Christmas.
Yeah, so here we are again. This is now a tradition.
This is our tradition.
This is now the second year?
Yeah. This is number 2.
Now it's a
Hard to
tradition.
believe.
I'm adding the
feels
topper
like a
to
decade.
the
Russell, how was your year?
our jingle juice.
Jingle juice.
That's what this is called. Russell, tell me about your year. Tell us about your year.
Well, just like this jingle juice, it was quite bubbly and made a lot of noise, but hopefully overall solidly enjoyable.
Yes.
I like it. How was your year?
Oh, me? It was a wild ride. Last year we talked about Krampus. We talked about Germany a little bit. That's what I remember.
That's what you did your whole year?
yeah. No, well, I'm just gonna recapping.
Okay, yeah. Well,
And
yeah, our
then-
big focus was Santa Claus.
Oh yeah, and it's actually really funny. So I just saw a post. I just saw this post where someone was in Birmingham. I think it was somewhere in the United States, a Birmingham city in the United States.
There's several of them.
They did a Krampus parade, and
Really?
and I saw all the conservative homeschool moms posting about how Satan's trying to co-opt Christmas,
Oh boy.
and it's like, well, Krampus isn't the hero, right?
He's actually the bad guy.
Yeah, he's the bad guy. So that also was not my year, but that was a highlight. Just as we're recapping.
Well, I think, and this is actually a little bit of a segue that then we'll come back and unsegue it.
Okay, cool.
Which is it's funny how, okay, well, let me start with this. I didn't realize until last year that we actually enjoy Christmas a lot more than we may have thought.
What do you mean?
I thought I was a casual enjoyer of Christmas, and I still think that about myself. But then I realized, apparently I might be a little more into it than I thought.
Give me some examples of
Well,
that.
as far as the history behind it, where it's why do I care so much about
because you're looking into it?
Yeah, it's why do I care so much about Christmas and Christmas traditions and why do we do this stuff and where did it come from?
So
most people don't know, and a lot of it's because we don't talk about it. So we have. I just heard it recently. There is some Christians that are like, oh, we're gonna do these Christmas sweaters, but we made sure Santa Claus wasn't on it. I was like, why? Why did you make sure of that?
why was it the prerequisite?
Yeah. Or then there are Christians that I know that refuse to put a tree in their house because they're like, oh, it's pagan.
Really?
I'm like, huh.
Oh wow.
And where is that coming from?
The homeschool moms.
That's where it is.
No, the homeschool moms are great.
They are great.
We have a homeschool mom ourselves.
We sure do.
Thanks, Mom.
Thanks, Mom.
Were you homeschooled too, Russell?
Absolutely.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, this is a homeschool group.
Hell yeah.
And now we're betraying everything we've been taught.
How?
Yeah, so I think that's interesting. And that's kind of where I feel like this yearly tradition for us that's become now is let's come on here. Let's celebrate our little Christmas together in the Tipsy Theology podcast and dispel some myths.
Dispel some myths.
But also, let's create some in the process.
What kind of myth do you think should be dispelled?
Well, we talked about Santa in general. We talked about Christmas trees. Or we could talk about Christmas trees.
I do want to spend some time on that, too. We actually have a beautiful one behind us. It's tiny.
Ooh la la.
That is. One myth or truth that I would like to explore is where did stockings come from?
Oh.
And why do they hang them above the fireplace?
Oh.
Yeah, that's an interesting...
Wait, I think I know this.
I don't know this.
You don't?
I don't know this.
Well, I think it has to do with Saint Nicholas.
I thought it did, too. I just didn't want to say it out loud.
because you'd hang your stockings above the fireplace so that back in the day they would dry overnight. They'd be warm and dry overnight.
Oh, yeah.
And then somehow the socks got outside, out of the house.
Really?
In which they'd be filled with things from St. Nicholas.
Yeah.
That's my
right.
understanding of it.
I think like the parents would put them outside for him to come by in the morning.
But that started somehow. I don't know how that started, but I'm pretty sure that's my just off the cuff knowledge of it.
So let me get this straight. This is like 1850, and
I think earlier than that.
a house with 11 children would have 22 socks that are grody, nasty, sitting outside overnight.
And they're like, oh,
And
now
they're
there's
like,
oranges in
or
it.
worse, fill it with food that we can eat.
They're like, how about a handful of mixed nuts?
No, but I think he would put a fruit.
Maybe a cranberry.
No,
or
I
two.
think he'd put a fruit in it.
I think it was
kind of fruit that you
oranges.
could
Yeah.
peel.
Wasn't it
yeah,
like-
yeah.
I think it was oranges.
Yeah.
And so they
Yeah.
wouldn't get scurvy.
But even worse, they would roast it over the fire first, so it dries out.
it's just hard as a rock.
Imagine to the teen spirit in that household.
It was fully scented with the feet
Well, I mean,
smell.
so we touched on this a little bit last year, but that's the interesting thing with Christmas and the traditions of it, is it starts off one way, and then it kind of just gets either really popular and things get adjusted and changed, or it doesn't become popular. Then it gets rediscovered and then popular again, but for a different reason. I mean, that's the Santa Claus craze. That's what happened with that. Another one, this is off the topic of Christmas, but still kind of showing an example of this, is why do Americans call it soccer?
I have no idea.
And so
That is interesting.
I just learned about this. And so we get blamed for this all the time. They're like, oh, Americans are stupid. Ha ha ha. Well, back in, I believe it was the 1800s.
They don't even know.
In England.
You know we're number one, right?
Of course.
America's number one.
Didn't a Canadian
Let's
invent
just
soccer
put that and leave it.
in
I
North
don't know,
America?
Actually,
it's very
that might-
possible.
Well, Paul might tell us.
Well, so this is what I heard. This is the info I heard. Is that
Was it TikTok?
Was it a credible source?
yeah.
it was
Cite
the
your sources.
internet.
You'll see you'll see the site, all the notes and all the sources in the show notes.
You're not seeing a thing. No, yeah. If there are some, I'll put them there. I'll find them retroactively.
The leading source. It came to me in a dream.
I woke up this morning
Googled
and
it
I
then
just kind
picked
of
the
knew
first
this.
link.
Well, okay, so back in the 1800s in England, they had the association football, and that was how we'd call soccer. Well, it started becoming very popular, and the Brits, they love to shorten words unnecessarily, and so they started calling it ASSOC, or ASOC, for association. And actually, I want a piece of coal. It's a little coal
It's
nuggets.
a lovely spread.
Thank you. So they started calling it ASOC. Well, then a thing that happened again in the 1800s, in Oxford especially, they like to add the ending ER to stuff randomly. So you've noticed that people do that. They still do that today. Well, they'll be like, "Oh, America," instead of America.
Have you heard that, Russell?
Never. Is
Yeah,
this just Brits?
it's a British thing. Yeah, the Brits do this all the time.
Well, you're cultured, so.
Thanks.
Yeah, I
Well-
typically don't spend too much time around the Brits.
Not as much as I can help it, because they might serve me food.
We have-
That's so rude.
Love the Brits, but your food's got to catch up.
Yeah, your voice does
Modern
not
time.
match your food.
No,
Your accent does not match your.
you're way too proud to serve that food.
You're sophisticated in every way except your food.
What's so shocking is they've never gotten like an update from their neighbors.
That's
It's
true.
like, wouldn't you want to keep up with the Joneses? In this case, actually eat something
Well, their
tasty?
national dish is chicken tikka masala. So
Well, that's ironic.
and
It's like
that's real.
they were like the kings of trade in the colonial era.
Yeah.
and they did they would trade spice.
yeah,
and
they would
wouldn't
trade
use
it. They would trade it. Don't
Well-
get high in your own supply.
But honestly, in today's world, we might actually see that as a good thing. Like, I feel like it's the equivalent of like try to burn, like in terms of your income, like burn as little of your income as possible so you can save as much as possible.
Huh?
Or trade.
What do you?
Who does that? Oh, that's a thing.
Oh shoot!
Okay, well, anyway, so they started adding the ending er to it. So ASOC became a soccer, which then just became soccer. And so the British started calling it soccer as their like nickname for it.
Really?
And then they introduced it to the Americas, to the U.S. as soccer because we already had football that was very popular.
Yeah.
And it was like football, like European football was becoming a little bit more popular here, but we were introduced to it as soccer. So we started calling it that, and the Brits went back and like, now we're going to call it football now. And never told us. And so we're getting made fun of for it, but they're the ones who taught it to us.
That's the best troll I've ever heard. Yeah. It's like a worldwide troll.
Yeah. But it's funny because I think this ties into these conversations around Christmas, because here we are like getting pointed and laughed at for certain things, or like, oh no, it actually means this. But it's like the British make fun of us because we call it soccer, but they're the ones who invented the word.
That's funny.
And then taught it to us. So it's like, well, hold on.
How did they
do you see
get
where
away
I'm going
with
here?
this?
Do they get away? They
For centuries.
They got away with so much.
Do you know what England's greatest export is?
Ideas.
Independence Days.
What does that mean?
Ouch. That's a brutal blow.
People just being like, how do we break away from them?
America.
So, Christmas.
Okay, yes.
What is it? Why is it here?
It's a holiday that we celebrate.
Okay.
It's a day where presents are given.
It is a day on the calendar.
The 25th of November.
Okay. Well, so I want to ask you,
my love.
Isn't that a song?
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Well, so okay, the Christmas tree.
Sing me the next line.
Sing me the Christmas tree. We brought this up.
Okay.
What is it? Why do we do it? Where did it come from? What are your thoughts? You don't have to be right. Just what are your thoughts?
What are your thoughts, Russell?
I feel like the tree is a superstition.
Keep going. I like where
Why
this is
would we
headed.
take a dead object, stick it in our houses, and then buy things to put under this object?
You mean like putting like a moose head over the the mantle?
Sure. Pretty weird if you ask me.
Surprise.
You see this tree? Let's put it inside.
You're covered inside, buddy.
You know, what do I know? But you just asked me this question, so I'm going to go into the banks of my mind.
Yeah.
The deepest places of
Pull
my
up
mind.
that Christmas memory.
I feel like I remember it being some kind of German tradition. All the coolest traditions start in Germany. I still love that country.
So, like,
what other traditions, Thomas?
modern German or old school German?
So
It's a few years in German history where not much happened.
yeah, let's just ignore that. I redact the statement, okay? No, but I thought it was a Christmas, a German tradition where I feel like it was like demon related, where they were like, hey, let's put this tree in our house to confuse, the spiritual world, to not try to indwell our home. That might be the pagan root of it, but like that was like the I think the basis of it, at least from what I can remember, what I think I remember, and they'd put like things that are reflective on it in order to continue to like promote this. This is not a house to a demon, I guess. I don't know. So it was used as a method of confusing the spiritual world. And then it became like a tradition that we all do because it's fun to have a tree in your house, I guess. I don't know. I think I said my piece.
I think I said my
This sounds similar to like Halloween,
Oh.
where you don masks and coverings that represent something, or you're trying to protect your house away from evil
Well,
spirits.
any medieval tradition usually revolves around that.
I mean, they had a lot going
Seems
against
to be
them.
the case. So are
with
you
how
saying
many people they killed during the medieval age? You're not gonna think they're gonna get haunted once in a while.
they need to do something to like keep their sanity?
Yeah.
Bring out your dead.
Maybe all of these holidays revolve around the same core concepts.
Honestly, they kind of do.
Please do not mess with
Very
us.
similarities.
But for
Yeah.
real, because
Yeah.
a lot of the Western Christianized holidays
Yep.
do kind of come from that kind of background, right? Where like life and death is just a way of life. Is more
Yeah.
common. Our sensibility, even like the Krampus thing that I already brought up. It's like everyone's like, "Oh no, it's evil and wicked. Look how they dress." It's like, yeah, he was a bad dude in a bad world, and this was like 1,000 or 2,000 years ago. Well, maybe not that old, but it's like 1,000 years ago. And so, our modern sensibilities has a hard time wrapping its mind around what makes our holidays what they are today.
Yeah. No, that's very true. Well, so the Christmas tree, to add on to this. No, I think you got a big mind on that.
Thank you, big brain.
Big brain boy. And well, because we view things from our perspective and from what we see, but not from what it is.
Explain.
And so,
Give me an example of that.
okay,
As I
what's
can-
an example of that? As you leave, you're not gonna try the jingle juice. We all will try all together. he's like, I don't want to miss out on any moment. So let me try to think of a good example. I'm trying to think of something biblically.
Or not.
Or anything, but or anything else. Well, the Krampus thing is one of those. We'll use that since you brought it up already. Someone in the West, in the U.S., sees this and says, "Oh, that's demonic." Well, why? Because they're seeing something that looks demonic, and they've been taught if it looks like that, then everything about it is demonic, and Satan is
quacks
trying
like
to take over. When in reality, if they were like, okay, what is it actually? What's actually happening here? Then they'd see it's actually quite the opposite. It's actually not demonic at all.
Well, I mean, in a sense, like,
Yeah.
in a sense, it is. Like, Krampus is meant to be a spiritual evil,
Yeah,
but again, he's not the hero.
and that's the point that I'm making here.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's not the hero, but they look at that as they're celebrating him. It's like, no, actually, there's no celebration of him right now.
Well, at least
There's
as it was meant to be celebrated.
Yeah.
I mean, like, this whole Birmingham thing that I just brought
Yeah.
up earlier. Like, maybe they have the worst intentions, and yeah, that's bad. Maybe, or maybe they're just celebrating the way that all the other people do.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't know that for sure because I don't know anything about it specifically. But when it comes to the Christmas tree, there's been, and you could look it up even on like ChatGPT. If you said, "Where did the Christmas tree come from?" it would tell you, and a lot of people would tell you, "Oh, it's a pagan tradition." It goes all the way back to the Romans or the Egyptians. It goes to the Norse, and it was part of Yule, and they would celebrate Asherah. Like that was the thing. It was the Asherah pole that they would put up, and this is what they would do, and they'd put it in their house and this and that, and it's like, okay, cool. So what are your sources on that?
Yeah,
And then there's-
ChatGPT. What
and
do you
then-
know?
I mean, if you
Get
ask,
out of here, ChatGPT.
you're just an AI.
You're an idiot.
You're stupid. But even if you ask people, that's like, okay, look, where's that source come from? What's the historical record of that? There'd be a lot of crickets because there actually are no historical records of that at all.
Oh,
Completely made up.
what do you mean made up?
Why
As
was
far
it
as
made
like
up?
them celebrating in that way. Celebrating the Asherah pole, the Yule stuff in that way.
So there's no record
of them.
an Asherah pool.
No, that exists. But them celebrating it in the way that they do, people say we celebrate a Christmas tree. Celebrate with a Christmas tree.
So why was
Those
that myth
connections
created?
don't exist. Because there seems to be a lot of people that like to just say everything that's Christian is pagan all the time. Which
There are, yeah.
There
the
are-
bandwagon.
there's a huge bandwagon.
You know,
for that.
Easter's pagan. Do you know Christmas is pagan? Do you know the 4th of July is pagan?
And to be fair to that, like there are points in there you can make as far
Sure.
as like
Except for the 4th of July. I just made that one up.
no, that one is real.
What?
No. I'm kidding. So
America was not first to make that day special.
yeah,
I'm joking. Continue, Paul.
America's special.
Continue, Paul.
We're all a bunch of special people. And so the Christmas tree has always been a very specific type of fir tree. I believe this is a Norfolk fir. There's also the Douglas fir, which is like a very traditional Christmas tree look. And these grow in various areas around the world. But majority of them grow a lot of them grow in our good old Germany, in Western Germany. Kind of interesting. So the legend, and this is back in the 1400s during Martin
And
Luther.
what are your sources?
Martin Luther.
Okay, good source.
Good sword. So there's a legend about him that says he was one winter evening walking out into the woods and walking through this pine tree forest, and he looked up through them and he saw the stars staring back at him, and it made him think about Christ coming down to earth in the incarnation, and that's why we put a star at the top of the tree. It was kind of like that.
What a homeschool thing to say.
But that's the legend about where the practice came from. Whether that's true or not, that part isn't really verifiable, but that's the legend that's been passed down historically. But there is evidence of the Christmas tree used for Christmas specifically in the way it is, because in that same area there are tax codes for this time of year about evergreen trees specifically, and rules around them and taxes and stuff that people have to pay.
Tax code in
Germany. Yeah, dated in the 1400s, used specifically for Christmas trees. But before that, we have no record of it even existing or people using it in this way. Even going back to like the Norse, I believe for them it was like oak trees were the more sacred thing. But even then, they would never bring something into their house like that. That would always be in like a sacred grove or a sacred area.
The Vikings knew what was up.
Yeah, they did.
So you're saying
Leave that outside.
that Germans were like, hey, let's get these trees from this forest, and we're going to get these trees from this forest, and we're going to have to pay for it, and there's a tax law.
Yeah, there's tax law to record
So that tells me that there's an economic there's economic exchange happening there.
Yeah.
And it's a tradition that more than one household is doing.
Yes.
And it follows the same line as this old theologian.
Yeah, well, it was around that same time of Martin Luther, and that's where the legend kind of came out of him. I don't know if it came specifically from him or not, but the idea was like this is a symbol that he recognized, and then he started to teach, and then it spread, and people started to take part in that. So, because it is like, why do we put a star at the top of a Christmas tree? I don't have one on top of this one.
I thought it'd be like the Star of Bethlehem.
Yeah, it was a recognition of the incarnation, like the star representing at the top. And so that's where that idea came from. Me
that the Christmas tree is the only tradition that is actually Christian?
Like completely. Well, I mean, even when we look at Santa Claus, Santa Claus historically has been a Christian tradition as well, in a recognition of Saint Nicholas. But then it later spread, and they're like, the Christians were like, let's adapt this a little bit to point more toward Christ. But so he became like a Christ-like figure.
The gears are turning in your head, Russell. I want to hear what you have to say.
Saint Nick was a legitimate guy in what, the 1400s?
Yeah. Oh, I think it was earlier than that. I think it would have been earlier than
I have
that.
to Google this.
I think he was three.
All right,
I think he was
ChatGPT.
I think he was three. I think he was
I
like
made fun of you.
380.
So
Because that was at the time of Constantine. And
Oh,
actually,
really?
do you know they just found his bones recently? They believe they found the bones of St. Nicholas.
How'd they do the DNA test on him?
I don't know how that works, but
Here's some
and funny
bone marrow
enough,
that's
guess where they
left over.
found his bones? 'Cause, like, we can't find it
So
anywhere.
280
Argentina?
AD.
The Church of St. Nicholas.
Wait, what? Wait, no, this is true.
Like, what?
And, okay,
Who knew it could have been there?
Yeah, that's. So I see, according to AI on Google, which I don't know how reliable that is. The range is 280 AD to 343 AD.
Okay, yeah, because he was also, he was present at the Council of Nicaea.
St. Nicholas?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let me get this straight. This guy basically starts doing charity work, and then everyone's like, oh, that's a great role model. We're going to make these stories about him
Yeah.
that are now passed down for centuries
Yeah, essentially.
about the guy who came and gave gifts to kids.
Yeah. Because he would give these presents secretly to people.
Who do you think originated these stories, and what did they get from repeating them?
If that story is true, then it originated from the people who got gifts from St. Nicholas.
Yeah. You have to watch the episode from last year again. Actually, that one's already been buried.
I'm just wondering, why does that story get passed down and others don't?
Like what?
Well, they were never passed down.
So we don't know. That's exactly his point. Because they're
For
not a jolly
centuries.
old elf. That's why.
Why did that one stick? That's what
Probably
I'm...
because there's a lot of fun.
It is fun.
It's a lot of fun. And I feel like people did it enough. Like, that's the thing that's like, oh, that's kind of a fun idea. Like, I can see a homeschool mom in the medieval age being like, that's a fun idea. Let me try that.
Weren't they all
Let's go with
homeschool
that."
moms?
I think so.
They had school. I thought they would get burned at the stake if they taught.
I thought they all just worked on a farm.
No, but I think something like that.
We like the fun ones, like Johnny Appleseed.
Well, that's the thing, like, but tradition, right? It's like someone starts something.
Timmy the Mudslinger. You don't hear much about him.
Exactly.
But,
These are the untold stories that we need.
The cultures of the West are like, okay, someone did something, and that was kind of cool. Like, let's do that ourselves. Let's make our own version of that in our own household, and it just kind of like takes
Yeah.
takes the cake.
Actually,
The most recent example of that would be Halloween, right?
yeah.
Because Halloween is becoming bigger than Thanksgiving.
It's been bigger than Thanksgiving.
Oh, okay, we're already there.
In my opinion, I think it's been bigger.
Now, when I
Why
was
do
a
you
kid,
think that
it wasn't.
is?
Well, I don't know what it was like when you were a kid, but Halloween was not like that big of a thing.
I feel like for a lot of small towns in the U.S., let's say for illustration purposes,
Yeah.
it is a thing to the extent that there's like a community event or people
Yeah.
are trick-or-treating in neighborhoods, and that's about the extent of it. But maybe you feel like it's grown way beyond that. I mean,
For sure. It's like a
now
nationwide.
maybe it's
It's
multiple
actually
days.
like, and someone was telling me about this. So there's like a lot of layers that go into it, but basically, family in the American culture has been redefined from the people who you're biologically related to the people you choose to spend time with. Like, that is like the redefinition of family. Like, a lot of friend groups out there are like, this is my family. That's mom and that's dad. They've redefined those terms.
Yeah.
Culturally. So like,
But I think there's been such a breakdown of family
Well,
over
maybe.
time.
But
So it's
I
like
guess
it kind of
my-
forces
my
you to have
point-
to say that.
my point is, like, Halloween is the one holiday that is not strictly tied to family.
Interesting.
And
yeah.
so,
Oh, good
because of the redefinition of what family is, it's become the new family holiday.
Right. And well, let me ask you this. Well, two follow-up questions.
Yeah.
One is maybe there's the replacement because of like Friendsgiving is now a major option.
Yeah, that's huge.
But then the second thing would be like, for you, would you spend Halloween with your family or with your friends?
Friends.
And why do you think that is?
Because it's not a family holiday, and it's a lot of fun to hang out with friends.
Trying to get rowdy with the boys.
Was that what you're looking for?
Bingo.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, but I mean,
So-
there are, especially these older holidays. It's a good point. It's like they are very family oriented, and And they're
Archaic.
But no one actually wants to hang
Archaic.
out with their kids. I'm sorry, what?
well,
Oh,
like
ouch.
give me a break, please.
Like Halloween, and I have to take my kids out for the next 4 hours on a sugar rush.
But when you think about it, in a lot of ways, it makes sense because. So that's your tribe, that's your people. Those are the farm hands too. And so it's like, okay, here's a time that we get to come together as the people that managed to outrun malaria and dysentery. And now let's get together and let's enjoy the fact that we made it through.
Share
But then
that good meat around.
Also, a lot of these times during the winter, those are the only people that are around you. So like these holidays that happen in the wintertime, you're not going outside because it's really harsh conditions. And it's like, oh, if I go out there, there's a good chance I'll die. So I'm not going to go out there unless I have to. And you don't live close to people as much as we do now. So it actually takes a little bit of time to get there.
Yeah.
So you're going to be stuck around your family the whole time, whether you like it or not, because you're just trying to survive the winter.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
And Thomas is just texting.
My wife is on a flight. So
Oh,
I'm just keeping track. So sorry.
that's fair. But the other thing that's been really big that I never actually noticed this until recently. There's this man has to leave again. Yeah, we just have to wait now. Do you want to crack in this jungle juice?
Let's do it.
This is such a disruption. Some guys. Okay, so this right here, this is called jingle juice. I found it online yesterday.
I'm excited.
Me too. So this is red Moscato, Prosecco, vodka, cran apple, and there's some lime, there's some mint, and I think that's all of it. Oh, and some like a little bit of sugar they put in to sweeten it up. So what's it gonna taste like? Not even the Lord knows. But I bet it's gonna taste like cranberry.
We will pray for clarity.
So I didn't really think this through too much. Besides, you just kind of dip these.
You have a ladle?
I could go check. Do you wanna entertain the people for a minute?
Sure.
Now both of Ulles are leaving you.
I'm all alone.
Okay, I'll be back in a minute.
There's a lot of plants in this jingle juice. Is this a vegetarian option?
I'm gonna leave that in. Just you staring at them. Just dead air. Turn that cup around, Buster.
Ooh, oh. The cranberries, the lime,
Let's
the
go.
mint.
This mint?
Is that what it is?
It sure is.
Listen to this pour. Hold
Oh,
There
you
we
get
go.
some cranberries.
That's how you know.
That's how you know
that
it's a
drink.
liquid.
It's a liquid.
That it's a liquid.
So I'm not a wine guy, so
Yeah, I hope you like it.
I don't know if I'll like it, but I'll try it just for you, Paul.
Thank you. There's cran apple in it too. So I think it's gonna be a little bit fruity. Is my
Paul,
guess.
how has your year been?
Oh, thanks for asking. I'm gonna rock with that for now. Thank you. My year has been pretty good. Yeah, it's been a whirlwind. Let's cheers first. To St. Nicholas.
It's all right. Yeah.
Yeah. What do you think?
I taste the mint. I taste all the things.
I
going
mostly
on there.
smell the mint more than I taste it,
Ah,
in my opinion.
I don't hate
definitely
it.
get the cran apple. It kind of dries you out a little bit.
Yeah,
which
yeah.
I like.
Oh, it's dry. Yeah.
Very wine-like.
Yeah, definitely. The Moscato is a dominant flavor.
Yes, there is a lot of it in here.
Really?
Like a whole bottle.
Why is it called Moscato, not Mosquito?
What?
Mosquito?
Mostly because of the spelling.
Because wait, is it an English word?
Mosquito. No, it's been a good year. It's been a lot of about a lot of new stuff. So
New
for those
stuff.
those of you that you don't know right now, but Thomas, you've recently started a podcast,
Yeah, I have.
and we're getting some recording in, and we're going to be releasing that at some
next
point
couple months.
in the next few months. So there's been a lot of work with getting that going. So I've been helping him with that. And then little tease, I'm starting a new podcast myself. This one will obviously still be going, but we've got a new one coming in as well.
Oh.
Yeah, so
Kinda
Kinda
give us a
cool.
little teaser? A little Christmas tease?
No, I'm going to leave it right there for now.
Okay.
I'm going to just wrap that on up.
Let it be unwrapped in January.
But tell us quickly about yours.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Really excited. Podcast called The Sage. And what we do is we have really good conversation. We like to interview people, ask them questions about who they are. And we try to interview people who are 45 and up.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a reason for that. And I know for a lot of people that's like, well, they can't relate to me. So I'm zoning out.
They're old.
They're old. Yeah. But truthfully, let's be honest. When we talk to these people who are above 45 years old, they've lived the same life that you're living now. Not in terms of what specifically, but they went through a lot of the same emotions, a lot of the same hormones, body changes, the same cycles of life. They've already lived yours, you know? So we want to talk to those people, get to know them, and then see what they have to teach us. So we have topics that are going to come out, such as like, how is the Old Testament a good mentor to us? What is mentorship? Why should we care? What is community? Why should we want to be involved in the people who live around us? We're going to talk about like work. That's going to be a really interesting topic, work, because there's a civil war going on with regard to work. Like, I'm only paid for 40 hours, so 40 hours is all you get. Or there's the mindset of like, of I'm going to give all I have to this because work is my sole purpose in life. And it ironically, there's a lot of people who land on a lot of different spots with regard to work. And they're like, well, and any old person's like, well, you're just lazy if you don't give all you've got. It's like, well, there's more to life than work, you know. So we'll talk about work. We talk about faith. We talk about the Old Testament. We talk about relationships and growing up, becoming an adult. So those are some of the topics we talk about, and I'm excited to do it. And hopefully, we'll be releasing here in the next couple months.
Yeah, so I've been editing away for you on that, and it's been exciting.
Yes, thank you. I appreciate that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, Russell, what's the topic that you would love to hear more about? Is there any kind of topic about becoming an adult, let's say, that you'd be like, I would like to learn a little bit more about this?
I was actually gonna say like the topic would be like how somebody who is, you know, more senior in their lifespan looks back at when they were young.
Yeah.
Like, what did they think of their 20s, for example, or what did they think of their 30s now looking back? Because one facet that is, you know, part of this is the first older people that you are exposed to, and the main primary people in that category are your parents.
Yeah.
And by the time you meet your parents or get to know your parents, they already had a whole life before they had you, in a sense.
Yeah.
And they may have been, you know, different people when they were younger to when they were older. So it'd be really interesting to hear like how they look back at that time.
Yeah, honestly, that's very true. Because interestingly enough, the more people I've talked to, the more I've realized there's a lot more that we have in common than we don't have in common.
Nobody wants to grow up.
Well, I think that can be a feature of it, but whether you're going to prom whether you're going to college, whether you're starting your first job, whether you're getting into your first relationship. All these things are things that these people that we're talking to have been through. And they've got some really interesting things to say, and I can't wait to share it with everybody else.
Do you have a like intended speaker lineup of people that you'd like to talk to?
Yes.
Or is that still in development?
So we've already talked to someone with regard to the Old Testament, which I mentioned. We're talking to a counselor who's been a counselor for over 20 years, and he'll be talking about relationship. And we're getting to know him as an individual. What are the best and worst parts of him? What was life like growing up? And then also, what wisdom do you have to share? We're talking about things like consistency. There's a guy who has been running a small group at IHOP every single week for 10 years. We want to get to know him a little bit. What about that consistency have you seen to be beneficial? We're going to be talking to guys about, and I honestly, I need to get some girls on the podcast too. But because it's like wisdom is not exclusive. Wisdom is not exclusive to men. It's a people thing, right?
Really?
Do you disagree?
Do tell. No, I just
Ouch.
Uh-oh.
No, but
I wasn't sure what you meant by that.
So whether it's
wisdom shows up in all shapes and sizes.
it does.
And people.
It does. Yeah, and so
does,
whether that's
yeah.
consistency, whether that's the Old Testament, whether that's prayer and defining success, those are all things that we want to talk about. So this has been a really long advertisement. So hope you listen to the Sage when it comes out.
You haven't looked at them one time.
The Sage when it comes out.
And where can we find this?
It'll be where it'll be.
Well, it'll be anywhere you can listen to podcasts or watch podcasts, like YouTube and Spotify and Apple.
So
Amazon.
Paul and I will do our best to advertise this so that
Yeah.
because it's not out yet. Like you're gonna hear this before even a first episode of The Sage is aired.
Yeah.
So, be looking out. It's coming.
It's going to be good. I'm excited for it. It's been good to hear, and I think it's going to be a good development and be helpful to people. But I do have a question for you guys. Do you know the song, It's the Most Wonderful Time of Year?
I do.
It's
No.
the most wonderful time. That one?
Wait, sing that at bar again? I don't think I've heard it.
You've never heard? Wait, you're lying to me.
I don't know. Am I?
Well, there's a line in that song that says sharing ghost stories
What?
or telling ghost stories.
Oh, telling ghost stories and ba 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 ba
Yeah.
ba ba da 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 da.
The glories of old.
Oh.
And so I never actually paid
Oh my
attention to
gosh.
that lyric.
Yeah, that's true.
I never paid attention to that lyric until recently.
Of course.
And it really stuck out to me, and I was like, what? And so it's funny because there is a very popular ghost story that's told and performed, and it's been done multiple renditions of it every single Christmas season. And that's a Christmas story or the Christmas Carol.
Really?
It's about ghosts, about Scrooge. But so what's interesting though is like, okay, so there's that one, but he says ghost stories. So it got me curious, and I wanted to go back and look.
Sure.
And this was actually, I was talking about this with a good friend of the show, Adam Continenza.
Oh yeah,
What's
Adam,
up?
what's up, bro?
For you. And I brought that up to him, and he was like, oh yeah. I was like, what do you mean, oh yeah? He's like, so again, going back to the harsh winters, things were dark, things were dreary, there's no interior lighting, there's no electricity. And so everyone's around there with candles and a fireplace.
And the tree.
And their tree staring back at them. And Santa Claus just around the corner freezing his buns off. And one of the things that people like to do when it gets frigid and dark and you're cozied up by the fire is get scared out of their mind.
Really?
And so it became a tradition around Christmas time to tell ghost stories.
Oh.
And specifically, it was like the grandparents would go and tell you the folklore but they would tell you these stories that they'd experienced, they'd encountered, and they would share these stories with the kids as like a, so they wouldn't sleep that night. And it actually has become, I think it's still to this day, if I remember right, a big thing over in certain countries in Europe. And there's actually been books written that have collected a lot of these stories so people can read them, like, Christmas ghost stories. It's kind of an interesting tradition.
Are they scary?
Some of them are, but a lot of times they focus more of like an Aesop fable. Some of them focus on lessons or wisdom or quandaries that you need that we can.
Sounds like a German tradition to me.
Yeah. So that got me thinking, to continue that tradition, what ghost stories do we have that we could share in keeping with tradition? And it's a very Tipsy Theology thing to do.
Have you ever heard any Christmas-related ghost stories, Russell?
Not besides the Christmas Carol.
Do you have a ghost? Do you have a ghost story to share?
Oh, any, like, not Christmas version.
It'll become Christmas
Like,
if you share
maybe
it.
there's no sleigh
If you
bells in
share
the
it-
background, but if it's just a ghost story, it's prime time.
Sprinkle them in if you need to. If you need to dress it up.
I don't think I have a ghost story per se. There's some
Okay.
creepy stories, but not a ghost
Tell me-
story.
tell
Has
me a
there
creepy
ever
story.
been a spiritual related incident in your life?
Absolutely.
Can you share one?
Really?
One that you're
Oh.
comfortable with sharing?
Sure. This will be vague.
Okay.
This will be intentionally vague.
Add some sleigh
Okay.
bells then.
Add some sleigh bells. So I was approached by 3 ghosts on the eve of Christmas. And I also met a young boy who was a cripple.
Yeah, and I bet you one said, "Hey, your life sucks." And
Golly, how did you know?
and then the other one said, like, "Hey, your past, that sucked too." And then there was maybe the third one that was like, "Hey, like your future, like the life after tomorrow, that's going to suck even worse."
That's
it's-
just brutal. I don't know how you come back from that.
It's funny, like that gets me thinking about like, the same thing happening but in reverse. Imagine you're the guy just laying in your room in bed, ready to go to sleep. Then all of a sudden, this ghost appears in your room with a much better looking version of you.
Oh no!
Like more successful looking.
Oh yeah.
And the ghost points and goes, and that's what you could be like.
And then
And he points at me. And then the guy's like, no, apparition, please spare me the horrors and the terrible night visions.
That
And then they left. And I
that
was,
would be so defeating.
they left, and I was over in my bed, just like, the heck? What just happened?
Oh my gosh, you're in a parallel universe.
And I'm the worst version.
Oh no.
You're like, how do I change universe this year?
Yeah.
That's crazy.
So what do you got for us?
Yeah.
So this will be brief. Don't get your hopes up. Essentially, it revolves around an abandoned building. There's an empty school bus that's parked in the back of the
Nice.
building. So there's a few questions of like, how did this school bus get here? Why is it abandoned? Who is involved? And it's all like dilapidated, super creepy. Apparently, if you were to go on this property, someone would appear in the window. Someone would be making noises inside the house. And then it would only be for a brief amount of time. And then, you didn't have any proof or way to like figure out what was going on. Doors were locked. It was hard to get inside. But then the whole property was just completely like desolate. It was also, kind of off the beaten path. You had to know how to get there in the first place and figure out where it was. But that fact of, it's an old abandoned building. People
Yeah.
say they could hear things or you could see things like shifting shadows or light goes on and goes off. And then, the most ominous question, why is there an empty school bus
Yeah.
in somebody's backyard?
Well, did you ever go there?
Yeah. and there was nothing to be found.
Really? Was it in broad daylight?
No, it was at night.
Oh my
You
goodness!
have to go at night.
You went at night.
If there was a light or if there was something, it was very easy to see, but we didn't see anything.
Interesting.
So you tell me. I mean, is this a ghost story that we would share on the campfire, or is this
The abridged version.
Yeah, that's very abridged.
Listen up, kids.
Listen up, kiddos.
That's interesting. So it's also very interesting that you did not experience anything like that if everyone else was.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it's hard to know what's hearsay. You know, what's the myth, or is this legit?
So here's a story for you guys. Ghost related. It's two people. This is a true story, by the way. They go on this ghost tour of this old house, but they had slaves' quarters and stuff there too. So it was like one of those kinds of places. So they went on this tour of this massive, I call it a plantation home, I guess, at this point. And as they're going through it, no one's really taking it seriously. But, you know, you've got the ghost hunters there that take things way too seriously. So those are the people that have, like, the apps on their phone. They'd be like, oh, yeah, if I play this, it'll, like, pick up on, like, radiation or something like that. And it's like, you realize that's just an iPhone 15. Like, I don't think it has radiation sensors
crazy.
in it.
They should.
But then some people do come in with, like, the big, like, all the technology and equipment to, like, scan the room and be like, oh, am I going to hear anything or find any activity? And the other two people that I know that went, they're like, we're just kind of here for fun. Like, we're curious more about the house than about this ghost tour. Well, during the tour, one of the people thought it'd be funny if they took a key that they found. It's just off, like, in a corner or something. Like, oh, this would be kind of fun. It's a cool key. Took it, put it in their pocket. And then further into the tour, one of the people stops and like, oh, wait, something's in this room. I can hear it on this app. And they're like, okay. And so they're there in the room with all this happening, and these people are trying to communicate with this quote-unquote ghost. And they're like, what? It's hard to understand exactly what they're saying, but, oh, you're here? Okay. Stolen something? What do you mean? No, we didn't take a key.
Are you kidding me?
And the two people that were not taking this seriously suddenly took it very seriously.
Then what did they do?
Well, they left. They put the key back and left it, and then left.
Oh my goodness!
So
Really?
this is real.
Whoa!
Where did this happen?
This is in Ohio.
That's insane.
Kind of interesting.
Do you know the people who did that?
Yeah,
You do? Oh my gosh!
I do know the people it happened to.
Oh my gosh! I do.
You do too. Yeah.
Whoa!
But it's
Wow.
interesting because then it begs the question: is that real, or like what happened? Because did someone maybe see that and they're
I
trying to
don't
play
know.
a prank?
Yeah, are you hearing things?
Maybe.
Is there other evidence?
I mean, that was the extent of the story.
Dang. Huh.
Kind of interesting, right?
Very. Whoa. So
But then there is the moral question, I feel like, inside of this story as well. Is it wrong to take the key home?
well, maybe they're gonna follow you.
And that's a good question.
Hmm.
Now, I would have left the key too.
This is a crazy situation. Like, okay, yeah. What's the big deal? It's an abandoned house. There's a cool skeleton key, I imagine.
Yeah.
That's pretty sweet. Let's take that. And then they say, oh, I can't really hear you. Wait, you're saying a key was stolen?
Yeah.
And I mean, like, okay, the rationalist would say someone saw them take the keys.
And they wanted to say something about it
Yes.
in a scary way.
Yes.
Yeah.
The alternative is there's something in that house and that is making, and it's aware of its contents,
Yeah.
and it knows what's going on.
And potentially, whoever's writing these apps needs to make some more money off of them.
Do you know what app they're using?
I have no clue.
That sounds pretty high tech.
Right?
Yeah, it does.
What about you, Thomas? Do you have any ghost stories to tell?
I have no ghost story.
Okay, then second question. Do you have a fable to share?
A fable
Yeah.
regarding ghosts?
Anything.
Well, I do know that if you start messing with spiritual stuff and it wants to kill you, sometimes it can.
It's not really a fable.
I don't know. I don't.
Is this why people put Christmas trees in their house?
Okay, so there
There
was
you
this
distract them.
there was this hare, this rabbit, right? And it was like, yo, I'm really fast. And there's a tortoise like, yeah, I bet I can win you in a race. I can beat you in a race. And then the hare was like, bro, are you for real? And then they're like, okay, let's make it happen. So they had a whole race, right? And the hare's like, I've got this. So let me go to my friend's house and just hang out for a while. Probably napped, probably had lunch. Meanwhile, the tortoise is just crawling,
Inching.
right? Just the whole length of the length. And honestly, let's be for real. The hare can probably run 20 times faster than the tortoise, but the hare was stupid.
Yeah.
They were stupid, and it decided hey, I got time. Well, the tortoise won.
It's true.
So what's the lesson there?
The lesson,
So here's what I pull out of that.
Okay, go ahead.
It's the difference between relying on raw talent and building a skill.
I mean, yeah, that's kind of what it's about.
That's what it's about. So the hare relied so much on its natural ability that it didn't put the time or effort into actually developing a skill. Whereas the tortoise, at a massive disadvantage, put in the reps, put in the time to become skilled at something, and ended up surpassing the one who's naturally better.
So when you look out your window on Christmas morning,
And you see a tortoise.
you see a tortoise, a hare,
And a ghost.
or a ghost, or a small boy, you better toss him a coin and say, "Boy, what day is it? Get me a turkey."
Get me a turkey as fast as you can.
I really don't have any ghost stories. I don't think there's ever been a moment in my
That actually
life.
surprises me, though.
Really?
Yeah.
I don't have any ghost stories, personal ghost stories.
I think I'm surprised by that, and it's because growing up, because for those who don't know, Thomas and I are brothers. We grew up in the same house at the same time. And I have a lot of stories from
in our
from those
house.
times. Yeah.
In our house.
Yes.
Tell.
Well, so one of them, and this was actually a bit later on, because I remember I was in the basement at that point.
Oh.
Basement.
How old were you? How old?
This would have been early 20.
Early 20s.
Yeah.
Was mom's old dolls there? That
No,
had,
those
had
were
the
that was out of
flickering
that was
eyes?
out of that is creepy.
Yeah,
That's
you know
the
those dolls that can
The
blink.
Spanish dolls.
Yeah, the Spanish dolls.
Oh my gosh.
Okay, so they're gone.
I had nightmares about that.
Okay,
thing.
well, hey, we thought they were demonic, so
I'm pretty sure it was.
okay.
So this was there's a mutual family friend of ours who was going through something very supernatural and quite extensively. And in the middle of the night sometimes their parents would call our parents, and be like, "Hey, please help, like pray or whatever, like the stuff that's going on right now." This is at a house that's like 45 minutes away from us.
I don't remember you ever living in the basement.
It was after you were in Florida.
Oh, okay.
Were you grounded?
Yeah. Me? No. Not during this time. At least not yet.
So, okay, so they're praying for a friend. You're living in the basement.
yeah. And
And-
so this was in the middle of the night. And I remember in my dream, I was visited by, like, I saw this face, and it was the face of death. And it stared at me and started laughing.
Was it hot though?
No, pretty ugly.
Oh wait, okay, so wait. The face of death. What does that mean?
Yeah, it's hard to describe. It's kind of like, have you heard people describe like the Hat Man
No.
or any kind of thing
Have
like
you?
that?
No.
So it's the Hat Man, for those uninitiated. We have an episode about it. Recommend you go check it out. It's one of the sleep paralysis demons.
Oh.
Which I had a lot of sleep paralysis experiences in my past and have encountered this creature multiple times. And so for him, it's like, it's hard to explain because like his face is all dark. He's wearing a hat typically, but you can see his eyes, and his eyes are blackness. And it's like, it's hard to exactly explain because it's like he's already dark, but his eyes are darker.
Great.
And
Okay.
so it's like, so using that same thing, it's like, what does the face of death look like? It's like, I don't know, just imagine something as disgusting as humanly possible, and somehow it's even grosser.
So this thing is staring at you. It's visiting you in your sleep
Yeah. And then it starts
while our parents are praying.
it starts laughing, and I'm asleep. I don't know this is happening. And it starts laughing about this at this time. And then so I'm like jolt, lean up in the bed awake.
So hold on. So in your sleep, and at the same time, in the middle of the night, our parents are praying, and this thing is laughing, and that awakes you.
Mm-hmm.
So what happened when you were awake?
Well, then it stopped, and everything stopped. And I find out, actually several years later, that the same time, the same night, this is when our friend who's on the phone with our parents was actually experiencing demonic possession. And it was happening during this time. And as best as we can understand, like, from what was going on, there was a point when it stopped.
My goodness.
So
And so there seemed to, for some reason, have been some kind of connection there.
let me ask you this.
Yeah.
Do you have any rationales or idea for why it appeared for you?
Mm.
Or did it appear for other people? Why do you think that happened?
Yeah, and I don't know that for sure. And the best that I can say is from when I was very, very, very young, I've always had those kinds of experiences. And so for whatever reason, call it discernment, call it sensitivity, awareness, whatever you want. It's like, it seems like those things just kind of happen to me. Or like I have those experiences. And so for that to be happening over the phone at the same time may have been enough for whatever was around to be like, oh, nice.
That's really interesting.
Yeah. And so to make that a little bit more interesting too, different story, but similar experience. And this happened to another person, not just myself. Something similar. So I used to work at this camp, and there was one night. So we had a group at the camp. It was a camp and retreat center, and so there's a lot of guest groups that came in there. And then we had like our normal camps that were sponsored by or run by the camp itself. And earlier in that year, there's a very tragic event where someone there was some sexual abuse that happened to one of the kids at a guest group, and so horrible, tragic, terrible thing to happen. Well, several months later, there's a segment of our group that would do camp, but it would be on the road. So they would travel to different churches, different places, and then kind of put on like a camp-like experience there. In that group, there was a group of them that were staying at this house. And one night in that house, there was a lot of activity that started happening. And what I mean by that is like doors opening and closing, locking by themselves, like cabinet doors flying open and like stuff shooting out. It's like pretty like what you'd expect. Like, yeah, that's typical
Yeah.
ghost activity.
Hollywood version.
Yeah. So like that stuff was happening. Same night, same time, there was the guy who runs the camp. He woke up in the middle of the night and he had this weird urge to like, I need to pray for this group of people. And so he got down and started praying for that group of people. Same time, same night, I'm walking back to my cabin and I see a demon on my road back to my cabin.
What?
Yeah.
I knew it was a demon.
So it was funny. So as I was walking by, there is, because it's down like a road, like a main, like not a main road, but a main road in the camp. And there was this light that would flicker, and I used to always joke as like, oh, that's the zombie or the demon light. We used to call it as a joke because it would flicker, but it only seemed to flicker when you were walking underneath it. When people would walk underneath it.
That's weird.
Yeah, it's pretty weird. But we were just like, whatever. Well, next to the right side of it, there's this field that goes down into Lake Erie. And so as I'm walking down there, the light starts to flicker. And I'm already, like, it's late. I'm already tired. And I'm already, like, just kind of freaked out for whatever reason. Because I've got to walk back in the middle of the night. Then the light starts flickering. I'm like, oh, there's the demon light again. And then I turn to my right, and I see this figure standing there.
How close from you?
It was probably a couple yards away.
A couple yards, so like we're talking like 10 feet?
No, probably further than that.
Okay.
Sorry. Maybe 15 feet away. 15, 20 feet away.
Dang, that's pretty close.
So it's close
Yeah,
enough.
that is.
Yeah, well, I see this thing standing there, and I'm like, oh, that's probably, because there's a kid that used to live on the campus, and I thought it was just him running around at night. And so I see him, I'm like, hey, dude, you need to go back to your bed.
Oh, shoot, so you're talking to it.
Yeah, I yelled at it. I said, hey, you need to go back to your bed and sleep.
Yeah.
Well, it turns around, and I'm like, oh, that's not him.
What?
So it turns around and looks at me, and I'm like, oh, shoot. That's not this kid.
What?
Yeah. So then it's one of those weird moments where I don't actually remember what happens next. All I remember is I started to run back to my cabin, and I woke up the next morning in my bed.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
Whoa.
So what's weird about that is like this is all happening the same time everything else is happening, with the people that are on the road, with the main, why can't I think of his name, like the executive guy who runs the camp. Like this is all happening at the same time. And then for me, I woke up the next day, I was like, well, that must have been a weird coincidence. Like just a weird night terror I had. Well, then I hear when the group comes back, they tell everyone the story. And then he tells his story. I'm like, my gosh, I think I experienced a very similar thing here. And then the next week, one of the kids at the camp experiences and sees the same thing I saw.
Oh, my goodness.
So it's kind of crazy, right?
Yes.
Kind of crazy.
What do you think it was?
What do you mean?
I feel like people have this theory that if you see an alien, the aliens have a way of wiping it from your mind so you forget.
Mm.
Maybe you saw an alien. What's an alien?
I don't think so.
Why not?
Mostly because it didn't look like what people describe aliens to look like.
Huh.
But yeah, I'll go with that.
The part where you're like, I kind of forget. That's what's wild to me.
That's the weirdest part,
Like,
right?
what happened?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I don't know.
Dang. What do you suspect happened?
I mean, in the best case scenario, what happened is I ran as fast as I humanly could back to my place.
Which is likely the story, given what you've said.
Most likely. In my mind, just like
Yeah.
out of fear or whatever.
Whoa.
That's what I would say most likely happened.
Whoa.
Yeah.
That's heavy.
It is heavy.
How old were you when this happened?
When this happened, I was 18.
And that's probably...
And did you talk to anybody else at the camp about these types of things?
I didn't
We're
talk
going on?
about it until a year later.
Really?
Yeah. I kind of kept it to myself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was wondering, like, maybe the camp leader had ever experienced similar things, or
Yeah.
other people that had been at the camp.
Well, so it's
Like,
what's
outside of
weird
that.
about it is because like I started the story, like what happened earlier was that the abuse that happened. And for me, I think that is kind of what opened up this event and invited this thing in to come in.
It's an interesting
Rome.
concept. That's a very interesting concept, which basically paints a visual picture of there is a wall or a shield that once an act done by a human is done, breaks the shield or the wall.
Yeah.
That then something can slip in.
Yeah.
That's the picture that you paint that I paint in my mind when you describe that story.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think so the way that I love this description when we talk about demons in particular, in their place inside the spiritual realm and their place inside of our physical earth is they're like the cockroaches of the spiritual world. There's like these little underlings, and they have when in and of themselves really no power, except for the power that we allow them to have, and that's by invitation. So when we do things that open that path up for them, we invite them into dwell. So it's like there's, I'll go as far as from the best that I know and I've studied and I've learned. A demon can never just possess your body. It can never just take over. It can never just harass you. Those are all things that you have to invite and allow in and give permission to do.
That's interesting. Also, an interesting, very side note.
Yeah.
There's this guy that I know who is very big into the whole demonic realm, casting out demons world. And he tells this story about how one time, he says, you can never, as a Christian, never be possessed by a demon. You can only be oppressed.
Yeah.
And the distinction is whether the demon has control over you versus is weighing you down. That's like the definitional difference. And so he talks about this time where he cast out a demon, and that demon latched onto him, oppressing him. And he tells the joke about how like he was going to a conference with a bunch of pastors, and he's in a bus, and he's like. And then he's like, I think I'm being oppressed by a demon. And then everyone's like, oh, hey, the guy's been oppressed by a demon. And then he's just like, evidently this bus full of pastors. It's like that demon didn't know what it had in store. I was in a bus full of pastors. We cast that demon out, and then a bunch of black juice came out of my mouth. It's like, what? That's gross. It's like, yeah, that's what happens when you're oppressed. You know, when you cast it out, a bunch of black juice comes from your mouth. Like, this is weird.
I don't think that's oppression. So what I will say, because there are stories about that where people that have demons cast out of them, they'll vomit up this liquid.
That's what he's describing.
Yeah, and oftentimes it's like a neon green or like a deep black.
It was the black one, yeah.
Yeah, but that has mostly to do with possession.
Well, maybe oppression too.
But it does bring up a big question. I think this kind of plays into the idea of, can you lose your salvation?
What?
Because the question that the reason people say that a Christian cannot be possessed is because the Holy Spirit dwells inside of them.
Yes, that's the argument that guy who told me the story gave.
Yeah. So then I think that it's like, oh, if you did something to allow something else to come in, was the Holy Spirit not there?
If you're possessed, but not necessarily oppressed.
But I mean, I haven't heard the vomit story about someone who wasn't possessed.
Well, I've never heard it ever, so
That's okay. Fair enough. Fair enough. Two different sides. Two different sides. Yeah, that's interesting.
Man, so
But I think with this, and it brings up an interesting thing, and that's there's so much that we as Christians assume to know, but we also ignore, and that's with the spiritual realm. And that's one of the things why we have a lot of these topics so much on this podcast, is like, let's try to open up this world a little bit in the right way to add some understanding, like what's actually going on here. And what is this? Let's add some terminology to this so we know what we're dealing with. What are your thoughts, Russell?
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense to me. It's like there's a lot of physical things that we can see but can't necessarily explain. And there's a whole, second layer or multiple layers behind that's always going on.
Yeah.
So here's my
big
question
part
for
of
you,
it.
Russell. Why is it that some people have all these experiences, but people like you and me have never experienced that?
That's a great question.
Hmm.
It could be like partly exposure, and it could partly be, there needs to be those experiences for certain people. I don't really have a good answer of why that happens, but I definitely agree. Like, it seems like it can be a little bit skewed. Some people have things frequently, and some people don't have it at all. So it's hard to explain.
Yeah.
That's fair. And Christmas trees.
But I think with that, it all ties together in this. We should be aware of what we do and why we do it. Where does it come from?
Our motivation, you mean?
Not just our motivation, but what is. So if someone comes up to you and says, "Hey, Christmas is a pagan holiday. Christmas trees are pagan. Santa Claus is pagan."
Yeah.
It's easy for us to be like, "Oh, okay." But it's like, well, hold on a second. Is it? Because if it is, like, sure, that's fine. We can go with that. We can go from there. But it's like, why are we allowing these things to happen?
Allowing what to happen?
As far as like things to be taken over. So whether that's like the Christmas trees, it's like, why are we allowing that to become this pagan thing when it never was a pagan thing? Why are we allowing traditions to become that when they never were?
But I guess the same argument can be made because like we said before, a lot of the holidays that we celebrate outside of July 4th is a pagan holiday originally, right? So it's
Sure.
it's co-opted is the phrase.
Yeah.
The Catholic Church took it over.
Mm-hmm.
So, I guess I don't quite understand your point.
My point is, now if you look it up and say where did Christmas trees originate, it would say from Norse mythology, when that's completely false.
Screw you, ChatGPT.
And so my thing is, why did we let
It's all
that
lies.
happen? Why are we afraid? Why are Christians afraid to put trees in their house when the original point is to celebrate Christ.
Okay, I will say, I was going to bring up Krampus again, but
Yeah, please.
this definitely wasn't necessarily a Christ-centered beginning. However, Krampus has never been the hero. But okay, yeah, whether it's a Christian, whether like, oh, it's just a pagan ritual, so we're not gonna do it. I guess what you're really asking is it okay to do things that were originally not meant as a Christian holiday or a Christian theme?
No.
That's not what you're asking?
No.
Oh, well, I misread the room.
No. I don't mean to put you out like that. Put him out
the
to
room
dry
perfectly,
accidentally. No, I'm saying is why are we allowing things that are Christian to be taken over, to be co-opted?
But who says they're Christian?
And who says they're getting taken over?
Well, I just explained that with the Christmas tree.
Well, yeah, but who's taking it over?
Everyone who's saying they're pagan.
But that's not necessarily taking it over. That's just saying this is deconstruction.
No. It's not deconstruction at all. Listen here. So listen here. This is what's happening.
Listen here, boy.
This is what I've been explaining is that if you look it up, people will tell you Christmas trees are pagan.
Okay.
But there's nothing in the history of a Christmas tree that is pagan. It is 100% Christian, 100% Christmas. And so why are we letting the narrative become that it is pagan when it never was?
I think you're looking at it the wrong way.
Okay.
So Christmas, we know, is originally a pagan holiday. Easter, we know, is originally a pagan holiday, co-opted by the Catholic Church to be made a Christian thing. Mm-hmm.
To be fair to that, it wasn't originally pagan. It was a blending of things, and it was blended onto a pagan holiday date.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, exactly. Yeah, fair enough. We're not celebrating the pagan tradition.
That's important to say.
We're co-opting a date and making it Christian.
Yeah.
Because like everyone knows that Christ was born in sometime in the spring or the summer. It's like, yeah, but we celebrate it in almost the winter.
Around the winter solstice.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. It was around a solstice holiday.
So my point is like, why are we letting people take over our holiday? It's like, well, people take over holidays all the time, historically speaking. So I feel like you're asking the wrong question, or you're demanding the wrong response.
I'm talking about things in specific, though.
Like what?
The Christmas tree.
About
Santa Claus. Like these are the things that I'm pointing at. I'm not talking about Christmas entirely. I'm talking about these specific things that are innately Christian and innately Christmas. But we're allowing people to say like, oh no, that's pagan, and we're gonna take that. It's like, no, this actually doesn't belong to you at all. Same with the rainbow. It's like the rainbow has always been God's promise
to mankind.
But we've allowed it to mean something completely different.
We've allowed it. Define allowed.
Who's saying it's... If you were to send a picture of a rainbow to
Answers
someone...
in Genesis is saying this is... Answers in Genesis is trying to take it back.
They're trying. But why was it given up?
It wasn't given up. It was just insisted by a certain community that it belonged to them.
But now it does belong to them.
Only because
how much of that is marketing here? Like,
it's
like the loudest voice in the room wins. So if they say something, then most people now recognize it as such.
Well, and that's kind of my point. It's like you're saying, like, well, who allowed it? It's like, I don't know. They just said it enough times.
Yeah.
Like you are giving them the power when you say that thing. Well, when you say that the rainbow is theirs, you've decided that belongs to them. But if you really believe that it's God's promise to mankind that he's never going to flood the entire world again, then we really know the truth. It doesn't matter who claims it. We know who the author of. Like if we know the author, then it doesn't matter what people say.
No, and this is what I'm saying, is that when you ask somebody that, anyone you pick, whether it's because of marketing or whatever, someone will give you a different answer than what it actually is. So I'm saying, how did that happen and why did it happen? The fact that it happened means that there was an allowance of that thing to happen.
Or just the passing of time.
Yeah, because things were let go.
So it was passively accepted.
It goes to the Santa Claus thing. Why is Santa Claus who he is today? We talked about this last year. Because he died out in popularity and no one talked about him anymore. And then so when new people discovered him, they changed him to mean something else.
Mm-hmm. Completely different.
But
interpretation
how we
of
look
him.
at Santa Claus today is not who Santa Claus was, but it's who he now is.
Mm-hmm.
And so people say, "Oh, he's pagan." It's like, no, he never was. But because people stopped caring, it became something else. The meaning of it changed, and that was allowed to happen. So when we look at the rainbow, why did the rainbow's meaning change? Because people stopped caring enough to tell people what it actually was. Why did the idea for the Christmas tree change? Because people stopped caring enough to say it wasn't pagan. Or maybe they didn't know anyway, and they just like, well, that's how it's always been. And it's like, well, no, it means this now. It's like, no, it's never been that. This is what it always has been.
So then I guess I wonder what the solution is. Is it the solution to be that person who's like, well, actually, you know what I mean? Like, because like,
Yes.
oh, okay, all right.
I mean, that's kind of what we're doing. That's kind of what we're doing right now.
In any conversation, you stick to your guns and say, well, actually,
I'll die on every hill.
let me open up my encyclopedia and tell you what it was.
I mean, that's kind of what we're doing right now.
I suppose. I guess I don't like. So I hear what you're saying. Here's my point of view. I love truth. You know, I was 2 years. How old was I? I was like 5 or 6 years old. My dad was trying to convince me that Santa Claus was coming through the backyard. He's like, "Look, I can see the hoof prints of the reindeer," and I was like, "You know, Dad, I love the truth." Like, that was like 6-year-old me telling my dad that I didn't believe him and I wanted to be told the truth. So that's me, and I think that's a very good description of who I am as a person. So that's my disclaimer. That's who I am. I like the truth. So that's, in that sense, I value what you were saying, that that like we need to know where things originate from and not let it be corrupted by people who are trying to co-opt it to a perverse point of view. However, I think if we make that the mountain to die on, then we've lost battleground on things that really matter. So what really matters is that, like, not like where Santa Claus originated from or where the origin of the Christmas tree comes from. The thing that really, really matters is that people know that the author of reality is called Yahweh God, and that person is the person we answer to. And that's the person that everyone should answer to. That's the thing that really matters. And all those other little things about the Christmas tree or about Santa, those things kind of fall in place along the way. Does that make sense? So I guess I'm saying I don't think the big deal is Santa Claus or the Christmas tree. I think the big deal is saying Yahweh God is the one who created all of reality. So he's the person that filters all the things we think about. I don't know. Does that make sense?
In some ways, but I kind of disagree with the premise in a lot of ways.
What's the premise?
That
God is right?
No. The premise that we're paying attention to the wrong things.
Okay.
And no, I think that it's important that we do pay attention to what's the most important thing. But all the little things along the way still matter, and they matter greatly.
How does the origin of the Christmas tree matter greatly?
And so this is one of those things where it starts with small ground in how we view things. And because when someone's going to say, "Oh, like I'm trying to think of a good example of what I'm trying to say."
It's the frog in the kettle.
Yeah. Yeah, when someone
You
says
lose little things over time, and
Yeah.
then slowly accumulates to something really significant.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's exactly what I'm trying to say. When someone says, "Hey, Christmas is pagan," and then you have a Christian go, "Well, no, it's not." Like, okay, Santa Claus, pagan. Christmas tree, pagan. Stockings, I don't know. Like, that's all pagan. You're stealing that. Well, now the Christian who is uninformed, the person who's uninformed, goes, well, at least Christ is real. Like, oh, is he? Because everything around his celebration was stolen from something else that is actually satanic. And they're like, oh, well, no, it's blah, blah, blah. You know what I mean? You're allowing yourself to kind of put yourself in a place that you don't want to be.
So you're
And
saying
now, yes, I do agree. The most important thing is who is Christ. That is the most important thing. But these things along the way lead the path. It prepares the way for that.
yeah, understood. Like you're kind of saying all of these smaller things really mean something. They matter because any compromise on the small things can also like raise the question of compromise or denying the most important thing, which maybe you're focusing on. So it all works together. Like if you start, let's say, for example, disbelieving in a smaller truth, then, maybe you deny a bigger truth because it's easy to get there. So you're saying like each of these smaller pieces really matters to protect what's actually going on.
I hear your point, and I don't necessarily disagree. However, it's like it's just a slippery slope fallacy. That's how I see it.
Well, I mean, that's exactly what happens, though.
So it's not a fallacy?
No, I would say it's human behavior because that's how you accept new ideas.
I get it. Like little concessions lead to bigger concessions.
Yeah.
I do understand that. However, I feel like there's a really thin line between legalism and our conversation.
In what way?
Because it's like, well, if I give up Santa Claus, then I've given up Christ. It's like, no, actually you didn't. You just said, hey, I don't care if he is or isn't. I know it goes to St. Nicholas, and that's cool. But what matters is that Christ was born. That's the thing that matters. But if you die in the hill of Santa Claus is pagan versus St. Nicholas, it's like, yeah, I think you care a little bit too much about St. Nicholas.
But that's not what I'm saying, though. And I'm not saying that's the hill to die on because then no longer Christ is Christ. But it's saying, and it's not you don't have to celebrate him or recognize him, but it's saying what are those concessions that you're giving up, and why are you giving them up?
So
is it because you can't be bothered with them?
The Christmas tree is Norse background. Well, actually, no, it's not. It's a Christian fundamental background. Cool. How does that affect my relationship with Jesus?
Yeah, so I mean, one of those is, well, what does the Christmas tree represent? It's all about symbols, and that's the big thing with that. It's the symbology of it. Symbols are important. Symbols mean something.
Sure.
Because our memory sucks. We've historically never been good at remembering anything. When we look at the feasts and festivals that God gave the Israelites to celebrate, he said, celebrate it this time, look for these things, do these things. Well, what if someone was like, hey, that thing you're doing is actually pagan?
Okay, but...
Well, let me follow this through.
Okay.
So I'm going to pick on like one of those feasts. And it's like, well, there's symbols that were given to these people to remember a promise that God gave them. Remember something that God did.
You're talking about communion.
No, I'm not. I'm talking about the feasts, like Yom Kippur or the Feast of Booths or something like those, Passover, those things. Those were all things to remember or to remember what Christ did and what he said he will do. And they were supposed to be celebrated a certain way to symbolize and remember those things. So if ice cream truck.
You hear that, folks? Ice cream truck.
I hope you can.
Wait, you can't celebrate it. It's a pagan tradition.
I know. Well, I guess ultimately,
you know the origin of ice cream, actually?
Really? What was it?
They ate something cold because they felt like something hot was demonic.
Really?
Oh, really?
No, I'm kidding. Mess with you.
Oh.
Dang, you got me there.
Dang, that was good. The ceiling.
That was
what?
Good.
Where? No, but
this part of the ceiling.
But that's my point. It's like, so Jesus told us specific things to remember. He didn't tell us, hey, just in case anyone 2,000 years from now is going to tell you that a Christmas tree wasn't originated from me, if they're wrong. It's like, no, it's like God doesn't care about a Christmas tree. God cares about the returning of Christ.
Well, this is what I'm trying to say, and this is the important thing. Yes, but that was the Christmas tree, as legend goes, was a way for us to remember the incarnation of Christ, what he had done. It was a promise that was given. This was different. It wasn't given by God specifically, but it was done in a way to remember what he had done.
That's what communion's for.
And so,
not a Christmas tree.
Well, even then, that's true. But this is another way for us to remember this thing. And so ultimately, what it ends up doing as well is it opens up a new thing.
What do you mean?
And this is what it opens up.
Okay.
And this is why I'm saying like these things are important. I mean, and again, it's like Christmas tree's pagan, sure, whatever, throw it away. But I'm saying it's not.
And I agree with you that it's not.
Yeah.
But I guess I disagree with how much it matters.
This is why I'm saying the other thing that's important, and because it can create this false reality. And when we say everything's pagan, every holiday is pagan, everything is pagan, it's like, well, okay, where did everything originally come from? Because paganism.
That's what I'm saying.
Paganism. Well, then we're saying the same thing ultimately.
Are we?
Because
are we saying the same thing?
Let me finish my point, please. Because if I love it, if paganism is the origin of everything, which is what people are claiming in small ways leads to larger ways, that have led to larger ways.
Well,
say it that way.
I mean, I understand. Okay, continue. Well, okay. My point being, it's like, yeah, everyone originated from pagan, but where did pagan originate from? So, like, it all goes back to the garden every single time.
Mm-hmm.
So, just because the furthest back we can record something is pagan doesn't mean that's where it started.
But I'm saying is we can't go back that far because it didn't exist that far.
Oh, okay.
Do you see what I'm saying? That's what I've been
Not
trying.
really, but I understand.
No, you don't, because you said you don't.
I gotta go to the bathroom again.
I said that all the time.
Gosh.
I understand, not really. But.
The point that I'm making here is, or I've been trying to make here, is that when we give up these things and make something what it isn't, what we're essentially doing is I lost my thought. Do you see where I'm going here? Maybe you do, maybe you don't. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I go back to what you said earlier, where you're basically giving up something that's a symbol. And the symbol means it's important enough to remember.
Yeah.
So if you give up those symbols, then what are you left with? You know, after time passes and, you know, memories fade or you lose the stories and the traditions, what are you left with? You don't have any of those symbols to remember anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's something that in our Western mind we don't understand is the importance of symbols and the importance of practice. Because what we do, what our actions are, is a symbol of worship. It's a sacrifice that's given towards something. And so what is it given toward? If we are doing practices, whether that's seemingly innocent, like putting up a Christmas tree, or we'll go with that, putting up a Christmas tree, then if we're saying that is actually worship of a false god, which is what a pagan practice is, well, now I'm worshiping something that isn't Yahweh. And it might seem innocent, it might seem simple, but like that's what it is. So when I and this is kind of why I'm making it a bit of a big deal, is because it's like it actually isn't that. It's an act of recognition and worship toward Yahweh, a worship of the incarnation, recognition that did happen. So it's like for someone to say like this is pagan, they're saying you're worshiping a false god. And I'm saying I'm not doing that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm actually doing quite the opposite. Mm-hmm. I'm worshiping something that isn't false. I'm worshiping something that is Yahweh. I'm recognizing what he has done and what he will do. So that's why I place a lot of significance on this and on symbols.
Mm-hmm.
Because to catch you up.
I heard.
Okay.
It goes back to your point, like you're aware of why are you doing what you're doing.
Yeah.
So the symbol matters, but then you as the the person practicing behaviors or, taking action towards certain thing is rooted in knowing why you're doing what you're doing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm a big advocate for that.
But you hate Christmas trees, Thomas.
Yeah.
Oh, you
don't
know
care
me,
about
Mr.
anything.
Mr. Christmas tree hater.
That's
That's
just
me.
a Grinch.
Yeah. Oh man. Well, yeah. I guess I've kind of made myself the villain in this traditional episode. But what's my point? My point is.
I thought Krampus was the villain.
Oh, thank you.
Not the hero, right?
Yeah, that's right. Certainly not the hero. Well, it's funny that you say that because I'm the one talking about all these homeschool moms who got the story all wrong. And ironically, as we're discussing Christmas trees and Santa, you guys are saying like the mainstream has got it all wrong and I'm making a big deal about it. It's like, okay, well, I guess we have a lot more in common than I thought.
Are you a homeschool mom?
yeah. I guess we got a whole lot more in common than I thought. I guess when you make the stance of like, this is something that needs to be rectified. What are we gonna do about it? like really, like how are we gonna redefine how culture's steering? Like there's like in our country there are like 360 million people. So like, how are we gonna convince all of them that what's true is true?
Wasn't that a bit of a defeatist attitude to take toward it?
Yeah, that's true. I guess,
and especially because
I guess the ultimate question behind it is, what's my job?
Yeah, what's the right response?
Yeah.
For an individual.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I love going back to an American classic, Ronald Reagan,
Ooh.
where every major change starts at the dinner table.
Okay.
And what does that mean? It's like, well, can we change anything right now? Well, actually, yes. We can change our own thoughts, and we can affect the people around us in our spheres of influence. But ultimately, where does that go? Well, it goes to their spheres of influence. And I know this sounds like the big moment where the piano starts coming in. You know what I mean?
Or
But
the
like,
start of a pyramid scheme.
exactly.
Going either way. If
Are you sick and tired
Your
of-
friends.
Are you sick and tired of being
to
sick
your
and tired?
But the point of it is,
No, it's legitimate. I have a store.
it's not a pyramid. It's a regular
We
triangle.
sell a product.
In fact, we just do it around the dinner table. So
Right.
We just do it on multiple
Yeah,
levels.
I sell it to all my kids. They have their own stuff, making a killing.
So just one question. If it starts around the dinner table, what if you don't have a dinner table? Meaning, what if you don't have a sphere of influence?
Then it starts at Lowe's.
What if you're
Okay,
an
wait.
average Joe?
Well, but an average Joe does have a circle of influence,
Do they?
a sphere of influence.
Every single person has a sphere of influence.
So define. Okay, I'm curious. What's
Yeah.
your definition of influence?
Well, that was my point, was how potent is that sphere?
Oh, well, I guess so. It depends, right? So if it's like, let's take a couple examples, like a sample pool. There's a single guy who works at Best Buy, and they go to church, and then you've got a married person with 2 kids and a stay-at-home wife, and then you've got another couple who it's like, hey, we're never kid people. And we live in New York City, and we've got just a couple of friends and our coworkers. So, in all 3 of those scenarios, I mean, we haven't really talked about basement dwellers, but in those 3,
I think we really should.
okay,
There's a large percent of the
in those
population.
4 scenarios, in those 4 scenarios, how do you define influence? Any person who is willing to listen to what you have to say is someone you have influence over. So for the New Yorkers, it's their friends and their coworkers. For the stay-at-home family, it's their kids and their family. For the basement dweller, it's the people they're friends online with. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like everyone has somebody. There's no one on this planet that doesn't have influence over, not necessarily over, but with someone else. Right? Mm-hmm. Like we all have an impact on people around us. You have an impact on me, Russell. Same way as Paul has an impact on me.
Really?
Yeah, believe it or not.
I think you should start, questioning that one.
So I guess I'm curious. I would love to hear your thoughts on it. But we all have people we influence, and so I guess Paul's argument, which I don't know why I'm defending, because I've been arguing with him this entire time.
Well, your mind's been changed. That's all right.
Okay.
You're allowed to see the light.
You feel so smug right now.
No, I don't.
It's we influence anybody who's willing to listen to us is someone we can influence, and so we all have people we can influence, and so that's where it starts. I don't know. I may have been speaking in a whole. Maybe I'm gonna shut up.
I think that
You're
makes a lot of sense.
You're
Just
good.
the question being, we all have circles, but how strong are those circles, or does that influence mean something? Yeah, you can influence them, but where does it go after that?
So
Well, I think
okay,
isn't that the wrong question in some ways? Where so your question originally was, so what do we do? What can we do?
yeah.
And then your question to follow up with that was, well, what if I can't do that much?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
And
if
I think
we do that.
I think that especially when we take biblical teaching into this conversation, is it shouldn't really matter.
And why not?
Because ultimately, it's like, well, when I think of myself, it's like, okay, what have I been tasked to do? Well, my task first is to love God with all my heart, soul, mind, and strength. If I can do that, then I've already done a great thing. In the sense of, I have a relationship with the Lord, but now I've been tasked with another thing, and that's to go tell other people about it. But it starts with first, do I know the truth? I think that's the first thing that we can do for ourselves is, do I know what the truth is? Do I know the truth of Christ? And then now let me try to tell you about it. Even if you're the only person that I know, it's like, well, I expanded my sphere of I reached out to my sphere of influence, the people in my life, and I reached out to every single person. 100% of the people know what I think about this now, even though it's one person. And then from there, it's like, well, now let me try to expand my influence. And let me try to push this and tell other people. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely.
Which I'd say, by the way, that doesn't mean be a jerk to everyone you know and be
No.
that person who's like, well, actually.
Really? Because that's what I was going to do with this information.
Yeah,
That's what I was
I know.
hoping.
I was afraid of that. That's why I'm bringing this up.
No, that's good. And I don't think we should be jerks about it.
Because it's the goal. What's the goal? Is the goal to be right, or is the goal to be influential?
I don't think it's either of those.
Oh, what's the goal?
Well, so this goes back to earlier in the conversation. Well, there's a couple points, but what if you have a great circle of influence that you never use, and on the flip side, no circle of influence, but you're very effective with the people that you do run into?
Define effective and not define what it means to be effective without having influence.
Sure, yeah. In this topic, it mostly means that they would listen to your perspectives. So you might know 100 people, but what if only one person actually listens? And then you might know 10 people, but all 10 of them listen and will follow up, or they'll, take some sort of action.
Wasn't that kind of when it becomes a pyramid scheme? Where it's
Yes.
like, well, how many people can that person influence? That's the pyramid scheme part of it.
I mean, yeah, but doesn't it matter where this goes?
Yeah.
Because otherwise, you still end up where you are right now, which is you lost your symbol. Or you forgot what you started out with.
Wait, explain that again.
Meaning, if, something small is compromised, and then you try to defend it, but nobody listens to you, or other circles won't agree with you, then it ends up being a wash. It doesn't matter.
But shouldn't it matter what you do personally, though?
Sure, yeah,
At the very least.
I'm saying the end result would end up being the same
I see.
because of that.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I think with that, it's like, I think it should matter first how we act and what we think, and then if we can influence others, that's great. But I don't think it means that we will, but we should try.
Mm-hmm.
In the same way, it's like, well, if you know it's good not to murder people, but nobody else agrees with you, and they're out murdering people, it's still right for you to not murder people.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like it's not a wash. It's like, well, one person did the right thing.
I'm just saying the end result would end up being the same thing.
In what way?
In your example, meaning, other people would commit these, heinous crimes or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, they still would, but ultimately it's like, well, I did the right thing and I tried with what I could to tell other people what the right thing was to do. And now it's on their ownness to do with it what they choose to do.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
So I gotta pick up my wife from the airport.
Yeah, it feels weird ending it right here.
I know. It should continue, and maybe it needs to continue without me. But I do have to leave.
It can't continue without you.
Yes, it can.
So
It has for an entire year. I've been listening. It's doing fine.
he's doing fine. Well, hey, I appreciate having both of you guys on here.
Yes, that's true. And the disagreement, it's funny because like in our world, it's probably like a big deal that we're like arguing, but I think to anyone, it just sounds like a normal conversation.
It probably sounds like two bickering siblings.
I think it's great.
Yeah, and I think, well, that's part of the fun of this, and I say this a lot, and I think it's important to keep saying, where it's like, well, why are we here on Tipsy Theology? It's to have hard conversations, even if they might seem simple up front. It's like, let's have conversations together, showing that we can have conversations even amongst disagreement.
Yeah, and I guess ultimately it's like, hey, if I'm talking to somebody that I know and they think like, oh, like the Christmas tree is just a pagan thing anyway. It's like, well, you're not. It's not, and you're wrong. But I'm not gonna die on a hill arguing with you that you're wrong.
Sure.
The Christmas tree isn't the thing that matters. That's really what I'm trying to say. It's like I'm not willing to argue with somebody about the origin of the Christmas tree. I believe you. I'm of the same mind that it's not a pagan tradition originally, but ultimately, like in the battle for your soul, the Christmas tree is not going to win you over. You know what I mean?
I mean, that's a bold claim to make, so maybe that could be.
Okay, wow.
That could be the
we
difference
don't know what God will use.
Yeah.
maybe you do have to talk about someone. But no, I mean, I think it is a big thing to say. It's like with anything, it's like, yeah, the call isn't to be a jerk about it.
Yeah.
Or about anything. Even when it comes to sharing your own faith, it's like the call isn't to be a jerk about it, because then no one wants to talk to you.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But it is important to know and to pursue what is true, and stand up for that when it is applicable, when it's appropriate. So, I mean, that can be a conversation if people, because I'll just say, in my experience personally, the people that do want to tell me that a Christmas tree is pagan are the pull their glasses up people.
Mm-hmm.
And so sometimes it is like, actually, no, it's actually not a thing, but whatever.
Yeah.
We can keep going to the next thing.
You're wrong.
No, actually, you're dumb.
Yeah, it's like, oh, you think you're smart? You're not.
And that's not the point. The point is what does the Christmas tree represent? It points people toward Christ. That's the symbol that it represents.
Yeah.
And so with it being a symbol to represent the incarnation of Christ, we can use that symbol to point people toward Christ.
Yeah.
Which is the ultimate thing.
Yeah.
So it's like, ultimately, in this conversation, why is it important to even talk about it? Because it points toward Christ. That's why it's important.
You're here.
So yeah, which is the biggest thing.
We got somewhere.
Just may have gotten somewhere.
And we got there with the jingle juice.
Let's keep going.
Against the odds.
Guys, keep talking, but I got to go. I'll see you later.
We're going to end it here.
Oh.
I love you both. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas to you.
Merry Christmas to you guys.
And next year, do you know what we're talking about next year?
We'll find out.
Oh my goodness.
More Krampus.
I need a full year to prepare.
More Krampus. More Krampus.
What should we let you guys tell us what we should talk about?
Oh yeah, that's a good idea. Let us know. What's the next topic?
Leave a comment, leave a like. Did Thomas and I make any valid points? Were we just two bickering siblings? and isn't Russell a great friend to sit here the whole time?
Oh my goodness. Yeah. He's here through it all.
Anyway, love you guys. Merry Christmas. I'll talk to you hopefully sooner rather than later.
That sounds great. Love you too. Do you love us too, Russell?
Say it.
Love you guys too.
Oh, yeah.